Okay, so for the first part of homework week number 7, so this is kind of like the part 1 video. The topic JXD is covering two-step equations. And basically, I tried to put down a variety of different problems I ran into on this topic on IXL so that we could go through a few different scenarios of it. But the bottom line is basically the same, all of them. Let's see if I have posted these. All right, so there are 3 things to keep in mind when you're talking about solving equations. So your goal is to isolate the variable or the letter. Basically get it by itself. The tools, or the tool, I guess, is going to be using inverse operations to get rid of things that are next to the variable. So, you know, like I would use inverse operations to get rid of the 2 so that the y could be by itself, or here so that the n could be by itself, or whichever problem I'm doing. And then 3, a reminder, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So basically, these are the 3 things to keep in mind. So that's kind of what we're going through as we're working through each problem. Isolate the variable, use inverse operations, and then whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. One other less mathematical, but I think equally helpful is here. Let's stick this on the edge here. Helpful tip for isolating the variable. Start with the number that's farther from the variable. So basically start with the one that's farther away. So let's go through an example and then we'll kind of explain what each one of these steps means. So the first one here, 2y minus 2 equals 6. So I have 2 sides to my equation. So I'm going to draw this line just to make sure you see that. And then if you're looking, I'm trying to isolate this variable. So I need to get rid of these numbers around it. And I'm going to start with the one that's farther away from the variable physically. This 2 is right next to it. This 2 is separated by this minus sign. It's like linked differently. It's farther away physically. So the opposite, right, the inverse operation is the tool I'm going to use to move this over to the other side. And that looks like doing the opposite. So if it's minus 2, like a negative 2, then the opposite of that's a positive 2, right? Plus 2. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So add 2. Negative 2 and positive 2 cancel. I have 2y left over. And then this is just a math problem. 6 plus 2 is 8. And so if I divide here, right? So now if I want to get rid of 2 times y, I'm going to undo the multiplication by doing the inverse, which is divide, which I like to look at as a fraction, right? Because we're getting to that point where fractions mean division. So 2 divided by 2 is y equals 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So that's how it works in a nutshell. So let's go through a couple more. So here I'm going to look and divide here at the equal sign. My variable is the m. So again, just like this one, the negative 4 is right next to it, and that plus 3 is separated by that addition symbol, so it's further away. So the opposite this time is subtracting 3, right? So plus 3 minus 3, and whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So these are going to cancel. Then negative 17 minus 3. So if you owe somebody 17 and $3, you owe them two different amounts. Now you owe them 20 when you combine it, right? And then this is negative 4 times m. So if I want to get rid of multiplying by that negative 4, I have to divide by negative 4 to get it to cancel out. And I end up with m equals negative 20 divided by negative 4, which is a not that positive 5, right? So just like here, where negative divided by negative cancels, this negative divided by negative is also going to cancel, and you're going to get 5. All right, moving over to the next problem, you can see that the setup is different, right? These were all kind of in a line. There was no fraction here, but now I have this fraction. But I'm still doing the same thing. I want to isolate the variable, which is m, and I'm going to start with the number that's farther away from the variable, which in this case, the negative 1's in the fraction, but the 7 is not with it in the fraction, right? It's farther away. So I'm going to get rid of it by subtracting 7. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So 7 minus 7, and I have this fraction left over. 10 minus 7 is 3. And so now it's saying m divided by negative 1. So here, when it was 2 times y, I had to divide by 2 to get rid of it, right? I had a 2 on the top and a 2 on the bottom, and they canceled out. Here, I have a negative 1 on the bottom, so I put a negative 1 on top by multiplying it. So these cancel out. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm multiplying this side by negative 1. And I put a parentheses around it so you know it's a negative 1 and not a subtracting. And so this equals m equals positive times negative is negative. So lots of sign issues that can arise, but as long as you're following these steps, you're really just doing the same thing again and again. Another helpful hint is that whenever you have two signs together, you need to rewrite. So rewrite the two signs. So either positive, negative, or negative, negative. When you see them together like that, you need to rewrite them. This is the same, positive and a negative together, right? Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. And then a negative and a negative is the same as adding. So you're really just changing those. So this is negative, negative here in the middle. So I need to rewrite that as a plus. So this is the same as really as saying c over 2 plus 4. This now is replaced by the plus sign. And so if I'm thinking of the two signs and I'm thinking of which one is farther away from my variable here, the 2 is with it in a fraction, but I have this plus 4 next to it. So I'm going to subtract 4 to get rid of it. And whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do the other. 7 minus 4 is 3. And then just like last time, since I have this 2 on the bottom, I'm dividing by 2. I'm going to multiply by 2 on the top there so that they cancel. And whatever I do to one side, I need to make sure I do to the other. All right, let's move these post-its up. All right, down here at the bottom, now I have this new setup, right? I have a parentheses for the first time. So I'm still going to start the same way, though, and I still want to isolate the variable. I'm still going to start with the number that's farther away from the variable, just like I said here. If I'm looking at this n, it's inside the parentheses with the 36. This is on the outside. And since that's on the outside, it's farther away. So this is really like an invisible multiplication, right? It's right up next to it, so it's multiplying. If I want to get rid of it, the inverse of multiplying by negative 4 is really dividing by negative 4. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So negative 4 and negative 4, division right there, reduces down to nothing, right? They cancel out. I have n plus 36 left over. And then this just says 0 divided by negative 4, which a lot of students get thrown off by that. But 0 divided by any number is just 0. Oops, say 0. Then I'm going to get rid of the 36 by subtracting. And n equals this negative. All right, let's try it again. So two sides. My r is inside this time. It's with the negative 4 inside, and the 2 is on the outside. So I'm going to get rid of this multiplication by 2 by dividing by 2. And whatever I do on one side, I'm going to do on the other. So 2 divided by 2 cancels. I have r minus 4 left over, and then 2 divided by 2 here. The reason it cancels is because it really just equals 1, right? And if you're multiplying by 1, it's really just the same. If you're adding 4 here, then to move that over, I end up with r equals 5. Okay, only 2 more problems left. So now if I look at this rewriting here, I'm looking here in the middle to see that I have these 2 minus signs together. So again, I want to rewrite this, and it's like the last one. It's going to be rewritten as a plus. So this is really 4 plus b. And even though this is not really 2 steps, it's kind of a 1 step. There's also a place where I see a lot of mistakes. So I just wanted to show this. So a lot of kids forget to rewrite. But if it's 4 plus b equals -6, and I put my wall up there, my line, I'm going to subtract away the 4 and do it on both sides. So I have b equals -6 minus 4, which is negative. All right, finally. This one is the only one IXL gave me with this setup, but you might run into them. So I figured I would show you one. If I'm approaching this the same way that I have been, isolate the variable, right, which is up here on the top, and I'm using inverse operations. So if I start with the number that's farthest away, the 2 is on the same side of the fraction. The 3 is on the opposite side. So I need to get rid of this first because it's farther. And since it's on the bottom of the fraction, it really means you're dividing by 3. So the opposite is going to be to multiply by 3. So those cancel. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So these cancel, and this just leaves j plus 2. What was left on top there equals 9. And then I would subtract 2 from both sides. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully you kind of remember all this from last year, right? I felt like a lot of students did. So we will do part 2 at the end of this week. Good luck. Let me know if you have questions.